Hello, today we will discuss about another important chapter on physics, which is force. That is force. What is basically force? In case of this force, in Newton there are three laws. Three laws are there. First law means if one object is at rest and if we are not providing any kind of external forces on the system or on the object, then ultimately the body will remain at rest forever. And if one body is moving with one uniform velocity and if there is no other force we are providing on the body externally, then the body will remain in motion forever. That is the first law. Second law means the most popular law. If there is the force applied on a body, then in the direction of the force applied on the body there will be the acceleration. And acceleration means the rate of change of momentum. Acceleration means what? That is the rate of change of momentum. Okay. And the third law, which is very common, already you have used in your earlier classes, that is action and reactions must be equal and opposite with each other. So from the first law, what happens if there is no force acting on the body, or we can say this is one system. On this system, if any kind of force is not basically acting from outside on this body, then ultimately this particular body will remain at rest forever. Inertia of rest, number one. Number two is inertia of motion. This is inertia of motion. What does it mean? Inertia of rest and inertia of motion means what? Means that is the case, actually what we have identified earlier. If one body is at rest, it will be always, all the time, it will try to be at rest position unless and until there is no external force which is acting on the body. And inertia of motion means all the body which are in motion, basically it will try to remain at motion. So what happens, there is the examples are there. If there is the bus, you are sitting on a seat of a bus and suddenly the bus tries to move in a particular direction with an acceleration, then what happens, our lower part which is basically attached with the seat, that means with the system, so it will gain the motion, but our upper body which is not that is the part of the system which is basically not attached with the system, so what happens, it will try to remain at rest, remain at its initial position, so we feel some jerk in the backward direction. So that is due to the inertia of rest. And that is again, if you are going with a motion within the bus, then suddenly it makes a break, then what happens, then the lower part again it will be at rest position, gain its rest position, but the upper portion of the body, it actually moves, tries to maintain its motion. So that is due to the inertia of motion. So we are feeling some little bit jerk again, but that is not in the backward direction, that is basically in the forward direction. So these two are inertia of rest and inertia of motion. Basically these are the two parts. Now what happens if there is the force which is basically applied on a mass m, then the Newton's second law becomes F is equals to m into a. That means when force is applied on a mass, then what happens, there must be some acceleration. Generally mass should not be equal to 0, so there must be acceleration if there is force, if the force is not 0. And now we know as m into a becomes v minus u by t, that means the change in velocity with respect to time, that is the rate of change of velocity which is called as the acceleration. Again we can call it mv minus mu by t, that is the rate of change of momentum. What is that? M into v or m into u. These are mass into velocity is called as linear momentum. This is the linear momentum. This term is very important. Linear momentum means there is the mass, but with velocity that will be become a new one, and that is called as the linear momentum. So there is the final linear momentum and this one is the initial linear momentum. So difference between that two in time t. So the rate of change of this linear momentum will finally give you the amount of the force. Okay, that is the main part here. So we can call it, that is kg, if this one is kg meter per second and per second, so kg meter per second square, like this, or we can say kg m is to the power minus 2, that is the part, kg m is to the power minus 2, that is the F, or we can call it also as in SI Newton. And in CGS this is called as the dyne, and 1 Newton is equals to 1 kg into 1 meter per second square. So we can call it 1 kg means 10 cube gram multiplied by 1 meter means 10 square centimeter per second square. So that becomes 10 to the power 5 gram centimeter per second square, which is basically called as dyne. Most probably you have done it earlier. That is the conversion between the Newton and dyne. Okay, that is nothing else, that is a small conversion. So we can say force becomes Newton, and force is what? That is the mass into acceleration, or rather we can say linear momentum change rate, that is the rate of change of linear momentum is basically called as force. Okay, now come to the point, if I want to make it little bit clarified like this, mv minus mu then should be called as mv minus mu should be called as F into t. That means change in linear momentum, the change in linear momentum can be called as the F into t, which is also called as impulse, that is the impulse. So change in linear momentum, force into time, is also called as impulse. It has a special name, impulse. So impulse is F into t or mv minus mu. Now there is another term which is called as impulsive force. Impulsive force. Impulsive force means if a huge amount of the force is acting on a body for a very small interval of time. That means a huge amount of the force when that is acting on a body for a very small interval of time, then this particular impulse is called as impulsive force because their time is very negligible, and what is the priority there? That is the amount of the force which is basically more applicable there. So finally we can call it impulsive force. Okay, that is a special case. What is the example? That means if there is the ball you have thrown, then there is the batsman who is making the batting, then what happens? The contact time is very small, so the force which is basically exerted by the bat on the ball is basically huge in amount, but the amount of the time or the contact time is very short. So we can call it impulsive force. That is one kind of example of the impulsive force we can say. The third one, which is very important rather, the third one is there is the action and reaction must be equal and opposite. We call it action, and there is another term which is called as the reaction. But what happens? These two are forces equal but opposite. So we can say action is equals to minus of the reaction force. What happens? One very simple example is this. Say on a ground there is a block, mass of that is m, so the weight mg which is acting downward, the force, that is the weight means the force which is basically applicable on the ground. So ground will also provide some force on the block which is just equal but opposite to the given direction of the force. So this is called as normal reaction force. So that normal reaction force is equal but opposite to this, always, all the time. Okay, right? So there is action and reaction, and we have to Just remember this, action and reaction must not lie or must not act on the same body, because here if I say mg is the action, then this action is basically acting on the ground, and here the reaction which is provided by the ground, that is normal reaction force, which is not acting on the ground again, that is basically acting on the mass, that is the block. So action on the ground and reaction on the block, there is the difference. The application of the action and reaction to different bodies, it must be on the same object, there must not be action as well as reaction. Okay, we have to remember this. Now what happens, say there is a body or block, if there is a block like this and we are making some force here, and due to this force there is acceleration of the body in this direction, say the mass of this is m. So what happens, we know mg here and there is the normal reaction force here. Now say this surface is smooth at this particular moment, let us say this surface is smooth, then what happens, force here, there is the only one force is there, F. So here it must be m into a, there should not be any kind of force. Now say if there is F1 and another force is there which is say F2, but here F1 is greater than F2, then what happens, F1 greater than F2, that means as per the vector already we have done, F1 when greater than F2 we have to take the resultant of these two, that is F1 minus F2 should be the value of the resultant, and that must be equal to m into a. That means actually the force is equals to mass into acceleration, we generally say, but actually what happens, F means the resultant force, so we have to identify the resultant force and that must be equal to the mass into the acceleration. Okay, now acceleration we can be able to find it out if there are some conditions, boundary conditions are given. What is the initial velocity of the body, say the displacement in time t is there, so from the equations of the motions we can be able to identify these values of the a, that is very easy. What happens if there is a u given, say, or rather after a time t the value of the final velocity of the body becomes v. So we know the equation v is equals to u plus at, that means from the motion. So from this we can be able to identify the value v minus u by t, we will get the value of this a. So we can put this value and got the final answer of this. Okay, so this is one part, how to identify the forces. Now this kind of force might be different way we can be able to act this one. What happens if there is the block and if there is the pulling force, we are acting like this, providing the pulling force here F, which is making an angle theta with the horizontal, then what happens, there is the F cos theta and there is the F sin theta. Now there is normal reaction, there is the mg, that is the weight. Now if there is F cos theta, then automatically on the opposite direction there is a reaction. Say this particular surface is not smooth, this is a little bit rough. So what happens, when there is a force which is acting in this direction, in opposite direction there is a frictional force, say this is F, then what happens, already we know from the frictional force, here we have made the components. First of all, in these cases generally what we have to do, we have to make the components. Say F is there, so if this angle is theta, so this must be F cos theta and this must be F sin theta, and there is a normal reaction, there is the weight. Okay, so what happens here, in these direction, that means vertical directions, there is no relative motion of this body, that means this particular body is not moving in the upward direction or downward direction. So in vertical direction this body is in total equilibrium. We can say now n plus f of sin theta is equals to mg. Say now n is equals to mg minus f sin theta. We can say this. This is the value of the normal reaction force. Now see, this F cos theta is much more greater than this frictional force. So there is one acceleration A in the direction of the F cos theta now. So what happens? F cos theta minus F is equals to mass into acceleration, like this. F cos theta minus F means F cos theta minus small f means mu into n is equals to ma, like this. So we can say F cos theta minus mu into n means mg minus f sin theta is equals to ma, like this. We can say, because we know the frictional force is nothing else but that is mu into n. So mu into n means mg minus f sin theta, because here we have got this value. So is equals to ma. So from this we can be able to identify the value of the A if all other things are known. So if you know what is the value of this mu, mu means the coefficient of friction. Already we know what is coefficient of friction. Most probably you have done if you go through the friction part. Then identifying these all, we can be able to identify the value of the acceleration. That is a simple way to identify the value. Okay. Next, this particular case might be in some inclined plane. It might be in some inclined plane. Then again that will happen. Say this one is moving in the mg is there, which is running actually vertically. This angle theta. So if you make components as this angle is theta, by the little bit coordinate system if you use, you can be able to identify this angle is theta. So this theta means this component should be mg cos theta, and the vertical component must be mg sin theta. Normal reaction, always all the time you have to remember, normal reaction is normal to the plane, not normal always all the time should be vertical. Vertical should not be. If the plane is like this, then the normal reaction should be perpendicular to the plane itself. So here this one is the normal. Say there is another force which is acting on the opposite direction, say F. Now there is again, it might be mg sin theta greater than F. It might happen that the weight of the body is so much that weight and sign component of that one is much more than the value of the force which is provided parallel to the plane in the opposite direction of its tendency to move. That means due to the weight it tends to move in the downward direction. So opposite to that direction, parallel to this plane, there is a force, and if this one is more than this, then finally there is the acceleration in the downward direction. That means mg sin theta, simple equations are needed there. Mg sin theta, if that is more, then what happens? It will accelerate, because there must be some, if that is more than this, then there must be some resultant force in the direction of the mg sin theta. That means mg sin theta minus f is the resultant force, and resultant force is always all the time mass into in that direction acceleration. Mass into in that direction acceleration, that is very important. That means in which direction you are getting the resultant force, in that direction only you have to take the acceleration. So from this equation you can be able to identify the value of the acceleration. And if capital F, that is the force applied, is more than mg sin theta, then what happens? It will try to run in the opposite direction. So F minus mg sin theta becomes m into a. That means in that case it will run with an acceleration in the opposite direction of this given direction. Clear? In collision what happens? Say there is A and B, two objects are there. Say initially they are running with u1 and u2 in right hand direction with these velocities. After the collision, say they are running in the same direction with v1 and v2, but there are some conditions you have to implement. say there is only one collision. After the collision, there is no collision again within this A and B. Let us say. Then what happens? If you want to collide this A and B, then U1 must be greater than U2. It must happen. This one must be greater than this so that it will collide with the B. And secondly, if there is no collision required, then what happens? V1 must be less than V2. That means V2 must be greater than V1. So there should not be any kind of collision again between these two. Okay. Now what happens? Let us say the mass of this is M1 and say mass of B is M2. Okay. Now when there is a collision, say in case of this collision there is a small time interval t is there, but before that let us say this A is providing one force on this one as F1 and there is another force which is basically provided by B is F2. We can say the B is providing one force which is F2 on A and A is providing another force F1 on B. That is the, if I say this one is the action, this one must be reaction force when they are colliding with each other. That means they are making one action and reaction. So we can say F1 must be equal to minus F2 because the directions are opposite to each other. Now we are saying the time t is basically constant for this collision. For this one and this one, the time to collide, the collision time is constant for these two. So we can write here F1 into t must be F2 into t, obviously. Now F into t already we have discussed, that is the value of the impulse, that means change in linear momentum. So what is the change? F1 into t due to F1, where there is the change? There is the change in the linear momentum of this B member. So we can write M2 into V2 minus U2. And similarly, due to F2 force, where there is a change in linear momentum, there is a linear momentum change of A. So we can write it like M1 into V1 minus U1, like this. So what happens? M2 V2 minus M2 U2 is equals to minus M1 V1 plus M1 U1. So finally M1 U1 plus M2 U2 is equals to M1 V1 plus M2 V2. That is the final case. So from this we can say, if there is a collision between two objects, and if I say there is a small, very small interval of time is there involved in the collision, then finally before the collision the total linear momentum, that is M1 U1 and M2 U2, that means before the collision, that is the total linear momentum. If I say this is one system, of this system is equals to after the collision the total linear momentum of the system. So this is also called as the conservation of linear momentum. This is called as conservation of linear momentum. Linear momentum. This is called as, this is very special term, conservation of linear momentum. So this is one important part, conservation of linear momentum. Now these collisions are of very different types. These collisions are of very different types. Within that, one specific type is elastic collision. Elastic collision. Another one is, basically this is called as perfectly elastic collision, perfectly inelastic collision. Number 3, that is partially elastic collision. Partially elastic collision. These are the main 3 parts. One is perfectly elastic collision, another one is perfectly inelastic collision, The last one is the partially elastic collision. And there is another special term you have to use, that is called as coefficient of restitution, which is generally represented by E. What is E? E is nothing else but that is V minus U, or rather it will be better to write it like this, V2 minus V1 by U1 minus U2, as we have identified earlier, like this A and B, there is U1 and U2, and after the collision there is say V1 and V2. Already we have learned about this part. So now that is E becomes, what is that? That is the ratio between the relative velocity of separation after the collision. So this is the relative velocity of separation after the collision, and this is the relative velocity of approach before the collision. So one is relative velocity of separation after the collision, and another one is relative velocity of approach before the collision, and that is the ratio between these two is called as the coefficient of restitution. And in case of this elastic collision, this E becomes 1. In case of this perfectly elastic inelastic collision, E becomes 0, and for this partially, E becomes within 1 and 0. That means it lies between 1 and 0. Okay, so that is the difference between these three. One is for perfectly elastic, E becomes 1, perfectly inelastic, that is E0. If that is partially elastic, then this becomes E, which lies between 1 and 0. That is the difference between these three. So when that is equals to 1, then what happens? E when 1, then V2 minus V1 is equals to U1 minus U2. That is the another say relation in case of perfectly elastic collision. That is one kind of relation we have got in case of perfectly elastic collision. And when it comes to E equals to 0, that becomes V2 minus V1 equals to 0, that is V2 equals to V1. That means if there is the perfectly inelastic collision, in that case after the collision the final velocity of A and B becomes same. There should not be any kind of difference. And for all kind of say collisions, we will get the E value, some value say half or something like that, then you will get one equation regarding E, V2, V1 and U1, U2. Okay, that is the case. Now the question is there, if there is any kind of collision which is basically called as, we can be able to call it perfectly elastic. Actually practically this kind of collision is not possible. Perfectly elastic collision is theoretical one collision, but little bit near about the perfectly elastic collision is one collision, that is the billiards ball. When we strike the billiard ball, which are very shiny, the board is also very soft, so the amount of the frictional force is also very minimum. And after the collision, when there is the collision, we can be able to hear one simple sound, tuck, one sound is there. But the collision between these balls, as they are very shiny, they are very soft, they are actually smooth enough, their surfaces are, so the amount of the frictional loss is also very minimum. So in that case there is only little bit loss of the sound energy, nothing else. Okay, what about the perfectly inelastic collision? Right, this one is possible. That means the elastic collision is near about that, but that is not perfectly elastic. So perfectly elastic collision is not actually available in the practical purpose. It is more or less theoretical, but the collision between the balls, the billiard balls, near about perfectly elastic. But there is perfectly inelastic collision. What happens if I am making one mud ball, and there is, we are throwing the ball in the direction, another ball of mud we are throwing in the same direction with the velocity which is higher than the initial velocity or the velocity provided to the initial object. So what happens, after a certain interval of time they will collide with each other and they will stick with each other, and when they will stick with each other they will move with the same velocity. That is happening here. Final velocity of the first one and second one becomes same. First one and second one become same when it is possible. It is only possible when the two actually stick with each other and they move with the same velocity, then and then this one is only possible. So perfectly inelastic collision is possible, and all other cases, all other collisions which we can be able to get in our day to day life, those are partially elastic collision. Okay, so all are basically partially elastic collision, some this and this. And there is another, but we will not go to the derivative or proof of that one, because there is no need to do that one. Is a very lengthy one proof. You can see any kind of book you can handle. That is, in case of perfectly elastic collision, another conservation is applicable, which is called as conservation of energy. Conservation of energy means, with respect to this perfectly elastic collision, we can say half of m1 u1 square plus half of m2 u2 square is equals to half of m1 v1 square plus half of m2 v2 square. This one called as the conservation of energy, basically conservation of the kinetic energy. Before the collision, the total kinetic energy of the system, that is the first one and second one, and after the collision, the total kinetic energy of the system. So these two will be equal if the collision is perfectly elastic. If that is perfectly elastic, then and then only these two should be same. Otherwise, these two are not same. These are going to be different. So in case of any perfectly elastic collision, we can be able to use three equations mainly. One is linear momentum equation, that is applicable for all kind of collisions. Then there is the conservation of the energy, that is another one, and there is another third one, which is E is equal to 1, so equals to u1 minus u2. So there are basically three types of equations we can be able to use in case of a perfectly elastic collision. But in case of perfectly inelastic collision, there are two equations we can be able to use. One is v1 is equals to v2 when E is equals to 0. We partially elastic collision, there will be only one condition is applicable, that is one equation, mainly one, not one, we can say in case of partially elastic collision, there are two equations are applicable. One is the E is equals to v2 minus v1 by u1 minus u2. Whatever be the value of the E, that is coefficient of restitution value is given, you have to put the value, you will get the equation. And another one is the conservation of linear momentum, which is also applicable in case of partially elastic collision. Movement of lift means, say if this one is the lift and if there is the object, then there is the weight which is acting on the floor of this roof, and there is a reaction force R, say R, that is the reaction force which is basically provided by the floor on the block. How this will come? Actually there is the tension where is there on the roof of the lift, and so there is the force we are providing from some mechanism. So this force is providing this R amount of the force on the body. This R force is basically coming from this applicable force, which is the mechanism providing the force on the lift. So what happens? There might be two cases. That means this particular body lift can move in the either in the upward direction with an acceleration, or the body can move with the acceleration in the downward direction if the amount of the mg is more. So that means two kinds of movements are allowed. One is upward direction movement of the lift and another one is downward direction movement of the lift. So now what happens? Say there is the upward direction, upward movement of the body we are now considering, that is the upward movement. What happens? We have said already, in which direction there is the acceleration, in that direction there must be the resultant force, that is the main part. So if in the upward direction there is the acceleration, then there must be the resultant force in the upward direction. So we can say R should be more than this mg, so that the resultant force should be in the upward direction, because R is more, is equals to mass into acceleration. So we can say R here equals to m into g plus a, right? We can say this. So that means when there is the movement of the lift in the upward direction with an acceleration, the reaction which can be felt by the body which is standing on the floor of the lift will feel that the weight of that particular body is much more now. That is not mg only, that is mg plus ma. So there is the combination of this mg as well as ma. So there is the combination, nothing else. So it will be little bit higher, heavy body is there. So the reaction force means it will have a feeling that its weight basically increases. Okay. Now if there is the movement of the body in the downward direction, then what happens with an acceleration? That is when there is the movement in the downward direction, then what happens? Downward direction movement means mg must be greater than r. So mg minus r now must be equal to m into a. So we can say r becomes m into g minus a, that is the r. Now this weight is little bit reduced. Now there is the question, this acceleration we can be able to increase, that is in our hand, we can be able to increase this amount of the acceleration, but we can use this acceleration increment. Let us say one particular example of this. If I increase the amount of this acceleration and ultimately this becomes equals to g, gravitational acceleration, then what happens? Then here r becomes m into g minus g, so this becomes 0. m into g minus g, so finally the reaction force is 0. When there is no reaction force acting on the body, that means the body will feel itself weightless, that is the weightless condition. So this, when a is equals to g and the acceleration which is in the downward direction in case of a lift movement in the downward direction, and if the acceleration is equals to g, then the condition is called as weightless condition, because the reaction force is 0. Actually we can able to feel our weight because of the reaction force which is provided by the floor on which we are standing now. If you are sitting somewhere and you are feeling that you have some weight, that means they are making some providing some reaction force on your body, and for that only you can be able to feel that you have a weight. And if there is no reaction force provided on your body, then finally you have to think of that you have no weight at all. So that is the weightless condition if the reaction force is 0. Now what happens if the acceleration is greater than g? Then what happens if a is greater than g? Then r becomes g, this one a is greater than g means this is less than 0 now. R is less than 0. That means r is negative, means r becomes negative. R negative means what? Before that r becomes in this direction, upward direction is plus. So r negative means actually the direction of the r is now in the opposite direction of the previous one. So what happens? The object is now lying in the with the roof of the lift. What happens if the body, the total lift is trying to move with an acceleration greater than g? Here there is the body inside the lift. It has simple maximum acceleration is g, because this one is not specifically attached with the lift. It is freely provided on the floor of the lift. So the maximum acceleration of the body inside the lift should have not more than g, but the lift is going downwards with an acceleration greater than g. So what happens if there is no roof of the lift? Then what happens? The total body will now come out from the lift and the lift will pass on in the downward direction. But it will not happen because there is one roof on the lift. So what happens, this body will stick with the upper portion of the, that is with the roof of the lift, and it will try to move in the upward direction. So there is one little bit thrust is there in the roof of the lift, so the reaction force is now in the opposite direction of that. So now the R becomes negative, and this particular condition has a special name. It is called as super weightless condition. This is super weightless condition, and this one is called as the weightless condition. These are the two conditions, super weightless and weightless condition. Clear? One is super weightless, another one is weightless condition. So these two are basically important part here. So that is the, with respect to lift, we have to understand one upward, one downward, and what are the values regarding weightless condition and when there should be the super weightless condition. And there is another small, remaining small part I can say, which is also little bit importance is there. Some problems you might face on this, that is, say one pulley, small little bit problems are there, but if you go through the IITs or something preparation is there, then this one is of very important part. What happens if there is the object like this, there is another object like this, then say there is M1, this one is M2, now say this one is M2G, that is the weight of this, there is M1G. Now when this M1G and M2G is there, they are making the force. So this force, what happens through this, it is providing the force here, that is on M1. M2G is basically providing one force here, and M1G is also pulling it in the opposite direction. So that means this one is providing some action, so this is also providing some reaction automatically. But here generally we can say for this or this, these are taken generally equal. These two tensions in the string in the opposite direction of this mg, okay, but these two T should not be same when the condition is this particular pulley is there, pulley should be frictionless. If this pulley is frictionless, then there is no force loss will be there regarding the friction. Actually, to overcoming the friction, there should not be any kind of loss in the tension. So this side and this side, the amount of the pull or the tension force which provided by the tensile ropes are same. So T and T should be same. There is M1G and M2G, these are actually acting in the downward direction. Now there is another part, that means if I say M2 is greater than M1, that means M2G is greater than M1G. If the weight of that is more than the weight of the M1G, then what happens? This side will try to move in the downward direction and this side will try to move in the upward direction. But here there is again another term should be there. That means if this string is inextensible, that is an important part term. If the string is inextensible, then in that case we can say the acceleration of this M2 in the downward direction and the acceleration of the M1 in the upward direction should be equal. Again I am repeating that one. If this string is inextensible in nature, then and then only we can say the amount of the acceleration of this M2 in the downward direction and the amount of the acceleration of this M1 in the upward direction should be same. If that is not inextensible, if that one is extensible, then the amount of the acceleration here and there should not be equal. That means these parts are basically taken in the case of IIT kinds of problems, okay, not for the simple problems, but for little bit difficult problems you have to face through. These are the parts. I am basically going to the simple considerations, okay. So here there is an acceleration in the downward direction, there is an acceleration in the upward direction with the same acceleration here and here. So what happens again, there is the important part is the free body diagram. Free body diagram means if you make the body free, means only I am showing the body with the forces acting on the body, and if there is any kind of acceleration, I am showing the acceleration. So what happens in m2, there is m2g in the downward direction, there is the tension T in the upward direction, and there is the acceleration on m2 in the downward direction. And in case of m1, what happens? There is the m1g in the downward direction, T in the upward direction, but here it will move in the upward, so there is the acceleration in the upward direction. These two are called as the free body diagrams of m2 and m1. That is the way to draw the free body diagram. That means just you are taking the forces, not drawing all those things of the string or something like that. Whatever be the forces acting on this and whatever be the amount of the accelerations the body is getting now, just you are exploring or presenting that particular part. So that is called as the free body diagram. Okay, here what happens? Again, the resultant force m2g minus T becomes m2a, because this is the final direction of the resultant force, because acceleration in the downward direction we have shown for m2. So what is the resultant force in the downward direction, in the direction of the A? So m2g minus T is the resultant force, is equals to m2a. So what happens now? We can, okay, this is the first equation, and for this A, that is in the upward direction, there is the acceleration. So the resultant force again should be T minus m1g, which should be equal to m1a again. So this is 1 and this one is 2. So if I make this addition of these two, 1 and 2, what happens? T and minus T will be crossed out, and m2g minus m1g should be there. m2g minus m1g is equals to this plus this, means A into m1 plus m2. Therefore A becomes m2 minus m1 by m2 plus m1 into g. That is the acceleration of the body. That is the acceleration of the body in this case. So from this we can, from this or this equation, we can also be able to identify the value of the tension in the string, which the string can be able to take care of. So we can write from this number 1 m1g plus m1a, and here if I replace this, you can be able to identify the value of the T, right? So little bit, that is the amount of the force, and those are the equations, how we can be able to derive it and what are the laws. Just little bit there is the explanation I have made. Now you have to go through your books, and then you can be able to clarify all those things.